Most people spend their entire day fighting for control, and then wonder why, when they finally lie down to rest, they feel like a stranger to themselves. They chase goals, manage tasks, and perform roles. But the moment the world goes quiet, an internal noise they can't quite name begins to surface. It's not the morning rush or the afternoon grind that decides the course of your life. It's the subtle, overlooked threshold you cross each night, right before sleep claims you. In that sliver of time, when the lights are off and the performance of being fine ends, a deeper part of you begins to speak. And what it says, or what you choose to let it say, is quietly writing the story of who you will be tomorrow. Section 1. The Forgotten Threshold. Think about it. During the day, you are a force. You're solving problems, managing relationships, and projecting a version of yourself that is capable, composed, and in command. But the moment your head hits the pillow, that carefully constructed version of you starts to dissolve. The muscles that were holding you upright finally relax. The mental lists that kept you productive begin to blur. And in that space between wakefulness and sleep, the ego, that vigilant guardian of your identity, takes its first real break. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist who mapped the depths of the human psyche, saw this moment not as a daily shutdown, but as a critical passage. He believed that sleep wasn't merely for physical repair. It was a door, a portal between the persona you wear in the daylight and the vast, unseen landscape of your unconscious mind. And what you carry with you as you cross that threshold doesn't just vanish into the night. It sinks. It settles into the fertile ground where your deepest habits, your core fears, and the blueprint for your future self are quietly formed. You might not notice it, but the emotional tone you set in your final moments of consciousness is a powerful seed. If you fall asleep tangled in the day's frustrations, you wake up with a sense of dread clinging to you before you even open your eyes. If you drift off feeling incomplete or anxious, you begin the next day with a subtle current of exhaustion that no amount of coffee can fix. A single, dominant feeling in that final hour can act like a rudder, steering your entire emotional state for the next 24 hours. So, the real question isn't what you accomplished today. It's, what state of being are you planting into the soil of your mind as the sun goes down? Stay with me, because understanding this one process is the difference between living a life that feels like a repeating loop and one that slowly, night by night, begins to transform into something more authentic. Section 2. When the guardian steps aside. Let's explore the first principle. When the ego lowers, the inner voice finds its volume. Nighttime is often described as quiet, but internally it's when the mind is most active. It doesn't speak in clear sentences, but in vague impressions, a nagging feeling, a restless energy, a memory that flashes unexpectedly. A day can go perfectly. You checked every box, fulfilled every obligation. But as soon as you lie down, as soon as the external noise fades, a strange emptiness might creep in. It's not sadness, not exactly worry. It's a subtle sense that something essential was left untouched. This moment reveals a fundamental truth about your nature. During the day, you operate from one part of yourself, the part that strategizes, performs, and adapts. At night, another part, one that was silenced by the day's demands, begins to demand an audience. This daytime manager is what Jung called the ego. The ego is your psychological survival kit. It helps you navigate the world, make decisions, and keep your emotions in check so you can function. It's the reason you can have a difficult conversation at work without breaking down, or stay focused on a task even when you're feeling low. We owe a lot to the ego, but it's also a very strict gatekeeper. To maintain a stable sense of who I am, it has to push aside anything that doesn't fit the narrative. Feelings that make you seem vulnerable, desires that contradict the path you're on, thoughts that challenge your carefully curated self-image. all of this gets pushed down. It doesn't disappear. It just gets stored in the basement of your mind. During the day, you're too busy to notice. There's always another notification, another responsibility, another distraction to keep the surface of the lake calm. But as the day winds down, as your energy depletes, the ego's grip loosens. It doesn't vanish, but it steps back. And in that moment of lessened control, the unconscious mind sees an opening. According to Jung, the unconscious isn't a dark pit of repressed horrors. It's the very foundation of your psychological life. It contains everything you haven't fully lived, everything you've never allowed yourself to become. Imagine a person who is always the strong one. At work, they are decisive. At home, they are the pillar. They never complain, never show cracks. But when they lie down at night, they struggle to sleep. There's no specific incident, no new crisis, yet a heaviness settles in their chest. From a Jungian perspective, this isn't a mystery. It's a sign that the ego has been working overtime, holding up a facade for so long that the rest of the self, the part that needs rest, that needs to feel, that needs to be held, has been completely neglected. The unconscious is not trying to torment them. It's trying to restore balance. It's reminding them that simply functioning is not the same as truly living. The unconscious doesn't argue or analyze. It communicates through feelings, through fleeting images, through old memories that resurface without warning. And if you aren't paying attention, you'll dismiss it as just being tired. But Jung believed those twilight moments are when the unconscious can reach you most clearly, because the ego is too tired to distort the message. He once wrote a profound line that cuts to the heart of it. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. He wasn't saying the unconscious is something to be afraid of. He was pointing out that if you are unaware of the forces operating within you, you will live under their influence without ever realizing it. You think you are making choices, but you are actually reacting according to patterns etched into your psyche long ago. The moment before sleep is when these patterns are most visible. Think of your mind as a deep forest. In the daytime, the sun is high, and the sounds of animals, the wind in the trees, and your own footsteps create a constant noise. You only see the well-trodden paths, but as night falls, the forest grows still. The wind dies down, the animals retreat, and in that profound silence, you begin to notice the subtle flow of the hidden stream you never knew was there. The unconscious is that stream. It's always there, flowing beneath the surface. But it's only when the noise of the ego subsides that you can finally hear its current. This isn't a sign of weakness. It's an invitation to wholeness. Jung believed we mature not by only acknowledging our strengths, but by daring to look at the parts of ourselves we'd rather ignore. In the daytime, we rarely have the inner space for that. Only when we stop trying to maintain a perfect image, stop straining to be okay, can the unconscious reach us honestly. Many people fear this moment before sleep, thinking it's when the mind is most fragile. Jung saw it as the opposite. He believed it's when the mind is most real. You're no longer on guard, no longer performing, no longer rationalizing. And because of that, whatever arises in that space carries far more weight than the 1,000 thoughts that occupy your day. If you constantly ignore this moment, you will continue living, working, and maintaining habits on the surface, while the unconscious quietly steers your life from below. It affects how you react to stress, how you sabotage your own success, why you repeat the same patterns in relationships. But if you begin to realize that when the ego steps back, the unconscious is trying to speak, you are standing at the threshold of genuine change. Transformation doesn't begin with daytime effort. It begins with the ability to listen when you are no longer in control. Section 3. The Unbroken Thread. Now, let's go deeper. Once you understand that this nightly surrender isn't a weakness but an opening, you start to notice something even more profound. The night does not end your day. It takes the thread of your emotional state and weaves it into the fabric of the next morning. This is the second key. What you carry into sleep follows you into tomorrow. Before sleep, you're no longer alert enough to filter your thoughts. You can't convince yourself that everything is fine with the same authority you can at 2 p.m. You stop playing the role of the resilient one, the optimistic one. Your guard is down, and according to Jung, the unconscious absorbs this raw, unfiltered state and uses it as the foundation for the next day's experience. So, sleep doesn't reset you. It metabolizes you. In the daytime, you can set things aside. You can stay busy to avoid thinking. You can stay rational to avoid feeling. But the unconscious doesn't work on a schedule. It doesn't see your life in separate pieces. For the unconscious, everything is a continuous stream. An emotion you didn't process doesn't disappear when you close your eyes. It just sinks deeper, and from that deeper place, it influences how you feel the moment you wake up. This explains a common experience. You wake up with a familiar, nameless feeling. The day hasn't even started, but your heart already feels a little heavy. Or, conversely, you might wake up feeling grounded and spacious, even though your circumstances are exactly the same as yesterday. That difference isn't the result of the new day. It's the echo of the state you carried across the threshold the night before. Night and day are not separate. They flow into each other in an unbroken cycle. In analytical psychology, Jung emphasized that the unconscious never overlooks what hasn't been fully processed. A thought you pushed aside during the day because you were too busy doesn't vanish. It simply moves to a deeper layer. And from that layer, it continues shaping your intuition, your mood, and your automatic reactions. You may not remember what you were thinking about right before you fell asleep, but you will feel its aftertaste throughout the following day. Jung wrote that dreams are the small hidden door in the deepest and most intimate sanctum of the soul. That door doesn't lead to something foreign. It leads you to what is already present within you. A dream doesn't create a new state from nothing. It continues the processing of the state you carried into sleep. Whether you remember the dream or not, the work of the unconscious continues, leaving its traces in the emotions of the next day. Here's a crucial point often misunderstood. The unconscious doesn't judge states as good or bad by a moral standard. It doesn't decide to make you miserable. It simply registers what is familiar. If you often go to sleep in a state of tension, the unconscious learns to operate in tension. If you habitually go to sleep feeling a lack, the unconscious treats that lack as the baseline state for your existence. And the next day, it works to maintain that state, not to punish you, but because that is the environment it has become accustomed to. This is precisely why so many people feel stuck in a loop. They try to change their lives during the day. They set ambitious goals, adopt positive thinking, change their habits. But at night, they still end the day with the same old, familiar feeling, the subtle sense of not being enough, or the low hum of anxiety. And the unconscious, loyal to what is familiar, guides them right back into the same rhythm of life. It's not because they aren't trying hard enough. It's because they are working at the surface level, while the roots of their psyche are still being fed every single night. Imagine your unconscious as a powerful, silent algorithm that runs whenever your conscious mind goes offline. During the day, you only see the output, your actions, words, decisions. But when night falls, the code underneath is being rearranged. And the primary material it uses to rewrite itself is the final emotional and mental state you leave behind. So, the practice here isn't about forcing yourself to think positive thoughts before bed. That's just more ego control. Jung didn't believe in suppressing emotions. The practice is simpler and more profound. For a few minutes before sleep, create a truly quiet space. No phone, no screens. In that space, simply note one thing. What is the predominant state present inside me right now? Can you name it? Exhaustion, emptiness, calm, a flicker of fear, a quiet sadness? Naming it isn't about controlling it. It's about letting it be seen, exactly as it is. This act, as small as it seems, carries immense weight. When a state becomes conscious, it begins to lose its silent, autonomous power over you, not because it vanishes immediately, but because you are no longer carrying it unconsciously. You are no longer letting it automatically decide how you will step into tomorrow. You can see this as a way of closing the day with awareness, rather than letting the day close you. When you do this long enough, you'll notice your mornings begin to change. Not because life is suddenly easier, but because the inner current, the flow between your nights and days, has been adjusted. Section 4. The gift of darkness. Now we arrive at the third principle, which is often the most uncomfortable, yet the most liberating. When you stop distracting yourself, the darkness you've been running from begins to appear. From the moment you stop trying to force a certain emotional state before sleep, stop trying to fix yourself to feel better, something unexpected happens. There's no immediate relief. Instead, you might be met with a sense of darkness. Thoughts you don't want to think. Emotions you've labeled as negative. Parts of yourself you've spent your whole life sidestepping. Here's what you must understand. This darkness doesn't come because you are weak. It comes because you have finally stopped running. In the daytime, distraction is the most common survival strategy. Work follows work. Screen follows screen. A notification follows a notification. Every time an uncomfortable feeling rises, you instantly find something else to occupy your mind, not because you are shallow, but because you've learned to exist that way. Distraction helps you avoid facing the difficult things. But at night, especially in that quiet moment before sleep, distraction is no longer an option. The space quiets. The body slows. The things you used to escape into have no power to pull you outward. And when you stop running, what you left behind begins to catch up. Jung called this part of you the shadow. In analytical psychology, the shadow isn't evil. It's the collection of all the parts of yourself you've excluded from your identity. Emotions you believe are bad, like anger or jealousy. Thoughts you think you shouldn't have. Aspects of your personality that make you feel ashamed, weak, or contradictory. In the daytime, you don't see your shadow because the bright light of your daily activities is too strong. But when that light dims, the shadow isn't something new appearing. It's simply something that for the first time is no longer hidden. Jung once said, and this is a line that changes how you view personal growth, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. He wasn't saying to wallow in negativity. He was saying that true maturity doesn't come from focusing only on the positive, the good, and the approved. It comes from daring to turn your awareness toward the parts you've disowned. Because what you don't see is what has the strongest power to control you. There's a classic Greek myth that illustrates this perfectly. The story of Persephone. She wasn't pulled into the underworld because she was weak. It was a necessary part of her cycle of becoming. Only after she spent time in the world below, only after she faced the darkness, did she become a queen, rather than remaining an innocent girl. The myth isn't trying to scare us of darkness. It's reminding us that certain parts of maturity can only happen when we dare to step into the unfamiliar regions of our own psyche. From a modern scientific perspective, there's an interesting parallel. When your brain is no longer bombarded with external stimulation, your brain's default mode network becomes more active. This is the system related to self-reflection, memory, and how you perceive yourself. In other words, when you stop distracting yourself, your brain automatically turns inward. And what gets processed in this state is often not the most pleasant memories or feelings, but the unresolved ones. So darkness doesn't appear because you're thinking negatively. It appears because you are finally quiet enough to hear what has been overlooked. This is why so many people are terrified of silence. They fear turning off the music. They fear lying still, not because they are lazy, but because deep down they know that without a distraction, they will have to face something. Think of it this way. During the day, your mind is like a busy train station. People are rushing, announcements are blaring, trains are arriving and departing. You don't notice the homeless man sitting on the bench in the corner. But when the last train leaves and the station empties, you can't avoid seeing him. The shadow is that figure. It was there all along. You just couldn't see it because of the noise. Jung didn't encourage digging through your shadow with a shovel. He didn't advocate for self-torment. What he spoke of was stopping. When you stop distracting yourself, the shadow appears on its own. And when it appears, what's needed isn't to drive it away, but to simply acknowledge it. No judgment, no rush to interpret, just a quiet recognition. This, too, is a part of me. The shadow often shows up as feelings you've long avoided. Envy, resentment, deep-seated fear, the sense that you're fundamentally not enough. In the daytime, you can push them away with logic. But at night, they don't need a reason to be there. And if you look long enough, you'll realize that behind every shadow, there is a need that has never been heard. A part of you that has been waiting for acknowledgement. Many people mistakenly believe that facing the shadow will make them worse. Jung believed the opposite. He argued that not facing it is what makes the shadow dangerous, because when it's pushed into the unconscious for too long, it doesn't disappear. It finds other ways to express itself, through your impulsive reactions, your self-sabotaging choices, your uncontrollable moods. When you stop distracting yourself, the shadow doesn't appear to punish you. It appears to be integrated. It wants to be brought into the light of your awareness, where it no longer has to control you from behind the scenes. This part doesn't ask you to solve the shadow immediately. It only asks you to recognize it. If you feel uncomfortable in silence, if you feel anxious when doing nothing, it may not be a problem to fix. It's a message to listen to. Section 5. The Blueprint Within. Now, let's move to the fourth principle. When you're quiet enough to stop running from your own darkness, and you stop filling the night with distraction, something else begins to happen. It's subtle, but it's more influential than you might think. Your mind stops processing only scattered emotions and memories. It begins to hold on to an image, not just a visual picture, but an inner image of yourself, of your life, of how you exist in the world. And this final image, the one you carry right before you fall asleep, is what shapes the person you become when you wake up. Jung believed that the human mind doesn't operate primarily through logical language. It operates through images and symbols. Daytime consciousness loves to analyze, explain, and name things, but the unconscious speaks through images. And in that twilight moment, when your consciousness is tired, the unconscious has a chance to place a background image within you. This image doesn't need to be clear or specific, but it carries a very distinctive feeling. Who am I when everything else settles down? Think about it. Before sleep, what image of yourself usually appears? Is it an image of a person who is always one step behind? A person who is trying but exhausted? Or a person who is learning to accept themselves, even with many things still incomplete? You don't need to answer out loud. The unconscious has already answered for you by leaving that background image in your mind. I once knew a man who was incredibly successful by all external measures. In the daytime, he was in command, solving problems with ease, speaking with calm authority. But he told me that every night, before sleep, the same image would appear in his head. He was standing alone on a long, empty road. Behind him was a stretch he had already walked. Ahead of him was a dense fog. There was no tragedy in the image, just a profound sense of loneliness. He didn't pay it much attention, thinking it was just fatigue. But every morning, he would wake up with the quiet feeling that he had to carry everything on his own, that he couldn't rely on anyone. No one taught him that feeling. No event during the day created it. It was shaped by that final image he carried into sleep, repeated night after night. From a Jungian perspective, this isn't random. The unconscious uses these images to create what he called an attitude toward life, your fundamental stance, how you see yourself in relation to the world. The last image of the day is like a photographic negative. When you wake up, every new experience will be printed onto that template. It's why two people can wake up in the same circumstances but have completely different experiences of the day. Their inner background image is different. Jung wrote that dreams are spontaneous products of the unconscious psyche, outside the control of the will. A dream isn't just a temporary emotional reaction. It's a spontaneous product that appears when your will is no longer controlling. The images that arise in dreams, or right before sleep, often don't speak about what you think you're feeling. They speak about the real position you are standing in within your inner life. And in the moment before sleep, when the layers of interference are thin, those images can appear with the least amount of noise. Imagine it like setting a photo as your phone's wallpaper. During the day, you open dozens of apps, read all kinds of information, watch all kinds of content. But every time you return to the home screen, the background photo is still there. You may not look at it closely, but it's always present. The last image of the day in your mind works the same way. It doesn't occupy all of your consciousness, but it's the background on which all other thoughts appear. What's remarkable is that this image isn't always negative. There are people who, even under immense pressure, carry a very different image before sleep. They see themselves walking slowly, but not lost. They don't know the exact destination, but they know they are moving. The next morning, they wake up not with excitement, but with a quiet steadiness that's hard to explain. Not because they think positively, but because their inner background image is one of movement, not stagnation. Jung believed that deep psychological transformation doesn't begin by changing your external circumstances. It begins by changing the inner image. When that image changes, your attitude toward life changes with it. And the most effective way to do this isn't to force a new image. It's to recognize what image is automatically appearing each night. Because that image is the unconscious trying to tell you something about yourself. The last image of the day is often very simple. It might just be the feeling that you are always chasing something, or that you are standing still, or that you are shrinking back. But precisely because it's simple, it has a powerful influence. The unconscious doesn't need complex stories. It needs a symbol strong enough to represent your state of being. And when that symbol is repeated long enough, it becomes the normal way you see yourself. If you wake up for many days in a row with the same familiar feeling of heaviness or limitation, it may not be because your life isn't changing. It's because your last image of the day hasn't changed. Jung didn't believe in self-hypnosis or forcing fake positive images. What he emphasized is making the existing image conscious. Recognize it. Stay with it. Quietly ask yourself, what is this image saying about how I am living? When an image becomes conscious, it begins to shift, not immediately, but enough that you are no longer being shaped by it in a vague, blind way. The last image of the day is not just a product of fatigue. It's an honest mirror, reflecting your deepest relationship with yourself. Section 6. The quiet journey home. This brings us to the final, most important principle. By now, you've likely begun to sense something that contradicts how we usually think about change. Life doesn't turn in a new direction because of one grand decision. It doesn't transform only through willpower and daytime effort. What truly shapes who you become over time happens in very quiet, very small moments. Moments repeated so often you barely notice them. And each night, as you close a lived day, you are stepping onto such a journey. It's the journey back to yourself. Carl Jung called this journey individuation. It's the process by which a person gradually becomes who they truly are. Not the version most accepted by society, not the persona that gets the most praise, but the most whole version. Wholeness, in this sense, doesn't mean perfection. It means no longer being split, no longer living only by the part of you that's allowed to appear in the daytime, while the rest is pushed into the shadow. What's critical to understand is that this journey doesn't happen through force. It happens through permission. Permission to stay with yourself, especially in the moments no one sees. In the daytime, you are forced to face outward. You react to the world, adapt to circumstances, play your roles. You have to be someone. But at night, when those roles fall away, when there's no one to impress or please, you have fewer reasons to keep performing. That's when the person behind the roles finally has space to breathe. And each time you allow yourself to end a day without running from the feelings left behind, you move a little closer to your real self. This journey isn't loud. There's no sense of victory. There's no clear milestone to announce, I am done. It's like walking in a dense fog. You can't see far, but each step takes you away from where you used to be. Each night, whether you're aware of it or not, you're still walking. The question isn't whether you're on the journey. The question is whether you recognize that you're on it. Carl Jung's own life is a perfect example. After his famous split from Freud, and at the height of his professional success, Jung entered a period of deep inner crisis. In the daytime, he was a respected scholar, giving lectures and seeing patients. But at night, he was confronted by dreams, visions, and emotions so intense that he was shaken to his core. Instead of suppressing these experiences or checking himself into a clinic, Jung did something radical. He chose to stay with what appeared at night. He recorded it, drew it, and entered into a dialogue with his own inner world. Those experiences were later recorded in the Red Book, not as a scientific treatise, but as a map of his journey inward. Jung didn't escape the darkness in one night. He moved through it, night by night. His life demonstrates a profound truth. The journey back to yourself is not a journey upward. It's a journey inward. And the deeper you go, the more you realize you don't need to become someone else. You only need to stop moving away from yourself. Modern psychology supports this from another angle. The deepest integrative processes of the mind don't happen when people are continuously stimulating the brain with information, goals, and action. They happen when the nervous system is allowed to slow down. When it's no longer in reactive mode, the brain begins to reconnect parts of experience that were previously separated. Sleep, and especially the minutes before sleep, is the natural environment for that process. It's not about fixing you. It's about bringing your parts back into one whole. Jung wrote a line that goes straight to the core of this entire journey. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. For Jung, the ultimate privilege wasn't success or recognition. It was becoming yourself. And becoming yourself isn't about adding something new. It's about gradually removing the layers that are not yours. Removing the roles you've worn for too long. Removing the images you've used to survive, but that no longer reflect who you really are. Each night, when you lie down with no one to prove anything to, no goal to achieve, no question of what do I have to do next, you move a little closer to the part of you that doesn't need to perform. That part may feel fragile. It may not know how to speak clearly, but it's real. And it's the repetition of these quiet, honest moments, night after night, that creates the biggest change. It's not about changing your personality. It's about changing your relationship with yourself. Many people think an inner journey must be tied to complex methods, elaborate exercises, or intense spiritual awakenings. Jung saw it differently. He believed the most important thing isn't technique. It's steady presence, staying with yourself long enough to stop fearing what appears. And sleep, in its most natural state, creates that space for you every single day. You don't need to understand yourself completely. You don't need to resolve every inner conflict. The journey back doesn't demand perfection. It demands honesty. Honesty with the feeling left after a day. Honesty with the last image you carry when you close your eyes. Honesty with the distance between the person you are living as and the person you truly are. For this final phase, the practice is simple. Before sleep, place one hand on your chest, breathe evenly, and give yourself a few minutes to just stop. Feel the breath rising and falling under your hand. Feel the body being present. No need to adjust your state. No need to reach for anything. Just stay still with what is present, whether it feels clear or vague. That full presence in the silence is already a small but real step on the journey back to yourself. You may not see results right away, but over time, you'll begin to notice very subtle changes. You'll respond more slowly to things that used to hurt you. You'll strain less in familiar roles. You'll no longer feel the need to prove so much that you're okay. You'll begin to feel more inside your life, rather than just running through it. Those changes don't come from daytime determination. They come from the integration happening at night. So, each night is not an escape from life. It's a return. A return to the part of you that doesn't need to be fixed, only to be acknowledged. And when you begin to see sleep this way, you'll no longer see it as emptiness. You'll see it as the quiet, steady footsteps on the journey back to yourself. Not loud, not showy, but deep enough that at some point, you realize you are no longer as far from yourself as you used to be. Conclusion. Perhaps by now, you've realized something essential. Your life is not truly decided by what you do in the daytime, but by how you end each day. The moment before sleep, when every role falls away, when there's no need to prove or control, you stand closer to your real self than at any other time. And that moment, repeated long enough, quietly shapes the person you wake up as the next morning. Jung didn't see change as a loud breakthrough. For him, transformation was a quiet process in which consciousness gradually learns to listen to the unconscious. Each night when you stop distracting yourself, when you stop running from the feelings left behind, you are allowing the neglected parts of you to return. And when the real self is present long enough, life cannot help but change direction. You don't need to think of anything grand before sleep. The only thing you need to carry is honesty. Honesty about the feeling that's present. Honesty about the image that's within you. Honesty about the distance between the person you're living as and the person you truly are. Jung believed that this honesty, not positive thinking, not strong willpower, is the foundation of a whole life. If this video made you pause and think, consider subscribing to join the journey deeper into the mind, the unconscious, and the path back to yourself. Sometimes, just changing one thing before going to sleep is enough for your entire life to begin to change.